Hey guys, I'm Jeremiah with AUXITO LEDs. Today we're going to be talking about proper headlight adjustment. So we're going to be looking at how to get the beam angle just right so that you're not blinding other drivers on the road and everybody's going to be driving safe at night. I remember the first time I swapped my aftermarket LEDs into my truck, and I didn't know that I needed to follow this step to put the LEDs in and then do the beam alignment. So when I hit the road that night, everybody was flashing me with their high beams, and I didn't know why at first because I didn't have my high beams on. So it took me a minute to figure out that I didn't do the beam alignment right. I had to Google it, and then Google showed me that there's actually a step that you take to get the headlights adjusted to the right height so they're not blasting over people's windshields and into their eyes when they're driving at night. So these are the steps that I took the first time I did that aftermarket LED installation, and this is the proper method that works every time to get your car safe and driving on the road with the lights right. Well, it is true that aiming your headlights too low can limit your visibility at night, but raising them too high isn't the answer. That just blinds other drivers and makes the road more dangerous for everyone. The real solution is using a measured method to find the perfect sweet spot where you get maximum visibility without putting others at risk. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. So today we're going to be using AUXITO LED headlights in our car here, but this also works for HIDs and standard halogen bulbs as well. So the goal is always the same, just to get that beam aligned just right so that you're lighting up the road without blinding everyone else. Now, we've already talked about why getting your headlights aimed right is so important. Now let's get into actually how we do it. Before we start, we want to make sure our LED bulbs are properly installed, seated correctly, secure, and facing the right way. The LED chips should be aligned side to side, not facing up or down. So if the bulb is rotated incorrectly, the light will scatter and the pattern will look wrong, and no amount of aiming will fix it. This is one of the most common issues with aftermarket LED installations. If your bulb housing allows free rotation, like many plug-and-play types do, rotate it until the LED chips are sitting at the 9 and 3 o'clock position. After confirming this, you should begin aiming. Otherwise, if you don't confirm that first, you'll just be adjusting a beam pattern that's flawed from the start. Alright, so before we start making adjustments, here's what you're going to need. A flat surface to park your vehicle. Level ground is super important here. Normally, a vertical wall or a garage door is ideal as long as the ground is level and you can pull your car up to it and have 25 feet of space to pull away. So also a pro tip, you want a low light environment like we have here tonight. If the sun is shining bright, it's going to drown out the headlights against the wall and you won't be able to see and get that right beam alignment. Otherwise, a dim garage or an underground parking can also work and be suitable in some of these situations if you have access. So before we begin, you're going to want to make sure you have a few of these tools. The first thing you're going to need is a measuring tape, at least 25 feet long, or a shorter one will work if you can make measurements in segments and then move your way away from the wall from there. Also, you're going to want a removable tape. A painter's tape is ideal, even electrical tape in a pinch, but you just want to make sure it's visible to the eye and it won't damage the wall. Also, depending on the make and model of your car, you might need a screwdriver or a ratchet with a socket. This depends on your vehicle's headlight adjustment mechanism. Phillips head is the most common, but some cars require a Torx bit or a small socket. Also, something I like to include would be a piece of chalk or a dry erase marker to help you mark the lines on the walls and also do a little dot on the headlight. But these aren't mandatory, they're just an optional handy thing to have if you have one around. And the last thing you might want to include is your vehicle's owner's manual. This is optional, but it's very helpful to help you locate your adjustment screws if they're tucked away or hidden, and it can also tell you what kind of screwdriver or Torx bit or socket you might need to use to adjust your headlight beam alignment. Now it's the time to prep the vehicle itself for proper alignment. This step is often overlooked, but it's just as important as adjusting the lights themselves. If your car isn't level or set up how it normally rides on a day-to-day basis, you could end up with total inaccurate results. Here's what to check before you aim your headlights. Tire pressure. Ensure all 4 tires are at the correct PSI. Uneven inflation, especially higher pressure in the rear, can tilt the car up and throw off your beam angle. Another thing to consider is vehicle load. Take out any heavy gear or equipment from the trunk or bed. A good rule of thumb, your car should be as close as possible to the typical day-to-day setup. If you always carry your tools in your work truck, leave them in. But if it's just extra gear for today, pull it out. Big weight shifts can cause the front or rear to sag or lift, which will throw off your beam alignment in the long run. One thing for some of you to note, if your newer vehicle has built-in headlight level adjusters, sometimes controlled inside on the dash by a dial, you want to make sure that's set to 0, which is the default position, before manually adjusting your aim. So once you've got your tires, load, and level ground all set, now we're ready to move on to marking the wall and getting those beam angles dialed in. It's time to get to the fun part, creating your reference guide on the wall. Step 1, pull your vehicle close to the wall. Somewhere about 2 feet away is ideal. Make sure it's straight and centered. This isn't where we'll actually do the aiming, it's just for marking our reference points on the wall. Step 2, turn on your low beams. This guide focuses on low beams, since they're the ones that affect oncoming traffic and typically need aiming when you change your LED headlights, and in most vehicles, high beams share the same housing and alignment as low beams. They just project farther and higher by design using a slightly different light source position. This works because both beams often use the same reflector or projector unit, but the high beam activates a separate filament or chip that sends light further down the road. Some vehicles do use a completely separate bulb and housing for the high beams. In those cases, the alignment may also be different. But in most factory setups, they're pre-aligned and rarely need manual adjustment. So unless your manual says otherwise, you usually don't need to aim your high beams separately. If your high beams do seem misaligned, whether it's a shared unit or a separate one, it could be due to an improperly installed bulb or an issue with the housing itself. We'll cover high beam troubleshooting in another future video. Step 3, mark 3 vertical lines on the wall using your painter's tape. The first line you're going to want to create is the center of your vehicle. The quickest way to find your vehicle's true center is to look for visual cues like the car's emblem or hood ornament. So now that we're ready to begin taping the wall, there's one thing we want to do to start, and we want to find the center line of the vehicle. You can use visual cues normally like a hood ornament or an emblem. In this case, there's also a crease on the hood that lets me know where the center is. So I'm just going to take my piece of tape and I'm going to line it perfectly straight up with the wall right there. So I know exactly where that center line is, right between the two headlights. If your car doesn't have a center line, you can measure between the two headlights and then divide it in half to find the center point, and you'll know from there. The most important thing is you just want to get it perfectly lined up straight, and there's your center line. The next tape marking we want to make on the wall is for the driver's side headlight. To do this, you're going to want to take your tape measure and measure from the ground up to the center point of your headlight. To find your center point, most headlights will have a little dimple or a little crease or indent on the headlight to show you where that center point is. If your car doesn't have the dimple on it, you can visually align it yourself by just looking dead on and drawing a little dot on the headlight, and that's going to be your reference point for where you want to measure to. So to find where we want to put the next piece of tape on the wall, we want to measure from the ground up to the headlight. This one sits about 25 inches. So I'm going to take that same measurement on the wall and go 25 inches up. And that's where we're going to put our first piece of tape so that the top line of the tape is at the 25-inch mark. Now we're going to do the same thing on the passenger side. So now that we've got our horizontal line set, the next thing we want to do is set one with a vertical strip of tape showing exactly where the center line of the headlight is. So to do this, we can measure from the center point of our vehicle all the way over to that dot on the headlight that we talked about earlier. And this one's about 28 inches. So we can do the exact same measurement on the wall here. So when you know how far it is from the center of the vehicle to the middle of the headlight, we can do that same measurement on the wall here to do our vertical strip of tape. So 28 inches is going to take me right here, and that's where I'm going to put the vertical strip of tape. We'll do the same thing for the passenger side. We'll take our 28-inch measurement. That's going to get us to right there, and I can take my vertical strip of tape, and that is where we're going to know the center line of the headlight is. So now that we have our tape set, this is going to be our reference point for where we set the height of the headlights. Now this is where things get a little bit nuanced. If your vehicle sits higher than 36 inches off the ground, that would normally apply to like large SUVs or trucks with lift kits and leveling kits. You're going to want to use the bottom of your 2-inch tape mark for that. If you don't have 2-inch tape, you just want to measure 2 inches below the line that you set, and that's where you're going to aim for your headlights to set the height. So for this vehicle, it sits below 36 inches. So we actually want to aim for the top of that line so it shoots straight on. But for the taller ones, you just want to make sure you're doing that 2-inch drop so that your headlights are angled down and not blinding other drivers as you drive at night. So now that our tape marks are done, we're going to want to back the car up exactly 25 feet away from the wall. So we can take our tape measure and measure our place, and we'll back up to that exact mark so our headlights line up 25 feet from the wall. So now that we have the car 25 feet off the wall, we can pop the hood, and at this point I always say it's best to leave the car off or leave the keys in the accessory position with the headlights on, so that way you're not worrying about any moving parts. There's no fans that you're going to catch your finger in, because we're going to be reaching down into the engine. You don't want any burns from a hot engine, and you definitely don't want to touch any fans. So we can pop the hood up, it's secure, it's safe. Now we're going to take our flashlight, we're going to shine it down here, and if you haven't done so already, this is a good time. You can check your owner's manual and make sure that you know exactly where that screw is you're looking for. But for this model, the Mustang GT, I'll show you, it's right here. So this is the most crucial part of the whole process. This is where you can actually take your screwdriver, as long as it matches up with the piece inside. Your owner's manual will tell you, or for me in this case, I was able to just visually inspect it and see that a Phillips head screwdriver will work. And we're going to take our screwdriver and we're going to get it right in there. And now we can start twisting, and we'll watch the beam on the wall adjust as we start making our adjustments. So we can see the screw right down there, and I just need to get my screwdriver on. And this is where I'm going to be able to twist. And usually counterclockwise will take you downward, clockwise will take you upward. When you're doing your beam adjustment, sometimes it's handy to block the other headlight. So you can do that with a sweater on a chair, or have a friend stand in front of it. And that way we know we're just adjusting the one headlight. As we adjust it, we can see the headlight moving down, and you want to get the cutoff line right at the top of that piece of tape that we set. Well, that looks good for the driver's side. We'll switch to the passenger side. Okay, so for the passenger side, we can take our screwdriver, we get right in there, give it a little twist, twist, twist. Okay, so we've got the passenger side up to the cutoff line. line. Now we can unblock the driver's side light and see them both side by side, and they look pretty parallel actually. They look very symmetrical. So once you're done adjusting the height of your headlight, you're going to want to move on and do the horizontal aim from side to side. This is where the center line tape is going to be useful. Not all vehicles have horizontal adjustment screws, but if your vehicle does, you'll find them on either side of the headlight assembly or tucked behind the housing. If your vehicle doesn't have the horizontal adjustment, that's totally normal. Just make sure the bulb orientation is correct and the vertical aim is spot on. The purpose of the horizontal tape is to aim and align the beam left to right so it stays centered on the vertical tape lines that you made earlier. The brightest part of the beam, often a V-shaped or like a stepped cutoff, should hit to the right of each headlight's vertical line. This helps light up the road signs and the shoulder without blinding the oncoming traffic to your left. So if you're in a country that's not in America, where you drive on the opposite side of the road, aka the wrong side, then you want to flip it and position them slightly to the left of that vertical tape. But for everybody in America where you drive on the right-hand side of the road, you want that vertical cutoff to be just to the right-hand side of that vertical tape that you lined up with your headlights earlier. Once you fine-tuned both beams, you're actually 95% of the way there. A few last pointers before we go. You're going to want to check both headlights once everything is aimed and make sure both beams are hitting evenly at the target line. If one side is slightly off, just go back and fine-tune it. And you can recheck this periodically over time. Sometimes your suspension might wear, or your tire changes, or even if you add cargo to the back, it can shift your alignment. So make a habit to recheck your headlights every few months, especially if you notice a difference in visibility or start getting flashed by other drivers like I was. And one more thing you might consider, if you're planning on towing something heavy over long distances, especially where you might be driving at night, you definitely want to follow these steps once your trailer is hooked up. And that's it. Your headlights are now properly aimed. Give yourself a pat on the back for getting it done without a mechanic. Just a few tools, a little time, and now you got a safer drive ahead. One important thing I'd like to add, even if you followed every single alignment step perfectly, your results will only be as good as the bulbs you've installed. That's why quality products matter. Cheap or poorly designed LED bulbs can often scatter light in all directions, making it impossible to get a clean cutoff line. AUXITO's LED bulbs are built to closely match the original halogen filament position, but they go a step further with a more focused LED and improvements to heat management. The results are a sharper cutoff line, a more usable light on the road with less glare for oncoming drivers. So it's not just about being brighter, it's about putting the light where it actually matters. If you're ready to upgrade your headlights, head over to auxito.com, check the link below for the full lineup of LED bulbs. We've got options for nearly every vehicle, so go see for yourself, and your vehicle and the oncoming drivers will thank you. Another tip is after aiming, it's always a good idea to road test your headlights. If possible, find a flat stretch of road at night or park facing a fence or a wall about 100 feet away. The upper edge of your beam should land below the average driver's line of sight, so typically under the height of most windshields. If you're still getting flashed by oncoming traffic, your beams may be too high and you need a slight adjustment. So go back to the beginning and follow from step one. So whether you're upgrading to LEDs for the first time or you just want to be a more courteous and confident driver at night, take the time to aim your headlights right. Your eyes and everyone else's will thank you. If you like this video, please give us a subscribe, give us a thumbs up below, and if you found any particular step of this tutorial particularly helpful, or if you have an idea of what you'd like to see us cover next, let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.